What's up, YouTube? Jay Travellini back. Today, I have the build we just did with the Ryzen 5 1600. But what we really want to look at now is the Cooler Master Q300P Masterbox case. So it's a micro ATX case that I built in. It's the first time I've used it. I'm going to give you my thoughts and everything on it. So first order of business is I'm going to take the side cover off here so you can really look inside. I just wanted to give you guys a visual what it looks like with it on while it's running, just from the perspective of it being fully built. So this is what it looks like, and now we'll just take the cover off and see what it looks like inside. All right, so let's get this cover off and see what we got. So it's just 4 screws. I tighten them a little bit with a screwdriver to keep them snug. Hand tight's just fine, but for the most part, I don't want to have this cover popping off on us. Alright, so now I can take them off by hand. You see, I still have all the plastic and everything still on it because these builds I usually just sell, so whoever buys it can have that fun of taking the plastic off. Alright, so now we can see inside the case and exactly what we got going on inside of it. So my biggest thing was being that it was a micro ATX case. I had the 500 watt Thermaltake power supply was my cable management that was going to go into it. This is the second micro build that I've done. First time in this case, I used a different Cooler Master box before, and the cable management wasn't quite as nice. I was actually pretty impressed with how this is. One of my things that I would have liked to see was a shroud in here to cover up, you know, the power supply and the cables, and then we could have just had them resting down here. But I was actually able to get them behind the back plate here, and they're actually resting behind the motherboard behind the back. So I actually have them hidden away on the other side of the motherboard, which is very, very convenient. You also see that I didn't have to have the PCI Express cable just shot right up the middle. I actually was able to wrap it around the back just to give it a cleaner look. The only cable that's really wrapped is my 3.0 connector right there. I would have liked a little bit shorter of a route to take, but it just wasn't possible in this case. What I did like was, even though it was a micro case, that I was able to get the pin connector for the CPU up top around the back and up through that top left up here so that you can't really see it. Some other takeaways is, you know, I have the fans folded up so you can't really see it. So I'm really happy with how the cable management played out and how it worked out. Being that it's a micro case, you gotta be careful with the card. I have a 1050 Ti in there. I could have fit the Strix 1060 in there, which I did have, but I ended up trading it off to a friend for this 1050 Ti. I know the 1060 would have been better. It would have been better for gaming. Would have been all around better experience. But doing a friend a favor and just taking a 1050 Ti off his hands for the sake of this build. So that's what we have in this build. It was a brand new 1050 Ti Strix edition, so it's in there. Could be overclocked if whoever wants to. We have the Wraith cooler in there, a very nice touch, give it a little more RGB. One thing I do like about these Cooler Master cases, which is why I go with them a lot, if you look in the front here, you'll notice 2 pre-installed RGB fans and a little RGB up under this plate to let the air flow in. I do like that Cooler Master provides RGB fans pre-installed in their cases. It's really why I go with their cases a lot of times. They make great products, and the fact that they install RGB right off the bat saves me time and some money on my builds. The back fan's not RGB, but it does come pre-installed with an exhaust fan. So I got the 2 intake fans in the front and the exhaust fan in the back that comes pre-installed. It does have a spot for a 240 millimeter radiator to go up top. I did not choose the water cool this build since I did get my hands on that Wraith cooler for free. So this Wraith Prism cooler is actually a really nice cooler, and it's got a lot of good reviews. So I did just go with that since I got it for free with that Strix card. The RAM's HyperX, that's fine. We did go with an M.2 in this build just to save us a little bit of cable management. The fact that it's tight and there's only really one spot to mount a hard drive on this case, which is a downside for it. I could have one down in the bottom here and just, you know, an SSD you can just double side tape if you wanted to. I don't recommend doing that, but it works. It's not going to harm it at all. I never use that method. I usually like to mount all my hard drives properly. But I have seen a lot of builders just use double-sided tape and mount it in random spots. So you could do that down here and have the hard drive just sit down there. The cable management was the biggest thing, like I said, but on the other side of the case, you can it's pretty well managed. One of the things I didn't like about this case is something I haven't come across before with a case, and it has to do with the back piece when we take it out, which I can show you right now. So one thing I didn't like about this case has to do with the back here. So when I installed the graphics card, I was taking these pieces out. So these actually snapped out. I'm used to unscrewing them from this side and pulling them out, where these ones actually just snapped out, so they don't really go back in, I know of. I could be wrong. They could go back in some way, but to my knowledge, these once taken out are out for good. So in this instance, it's not that big a deal, but as far as upgrading, if you went with a different one and you decided to go with something different that didn't use 2 slots, you're kind of just going to have a gap. But for the most part, that's something minor. I wouldn't consider that a major deal breaker. As long as you're pulling the right ones out to begin with and taking your time with your build and not just pulling them out to pull them out, you should be fine. There's only 3 or 4 slots anyway. But if I wanted to add a Wi-Fi card and I took one out, later on decided I didn't need that card and I just wanted to take out a computer, I would just have that gap. So that's one thing I didn't like about it. All right, so back with the RGB fans. They do come with this connector, which is very common with Cooler Master things. It's a little controller, and I'll take it out of the bag here to try and give you a better look. Comes with this little controller. You wire it in. It has an RGB. You put all the RGB, the 4 pins into there, and then this connects up to your power supply, and then you can control your RGB with it. Just a click of a button changes your RGB colors. In this instance, I did not put this in. So I actually have the RGB ran off the motherboard's RGB header. So that way it can be controlled by software. You don't have to open the case back up to change it. So that instance, you have to look at your motherboard to see if you have it. The weird thing about these fans, I wouldn't say weird, it's just an old style, is the connector they had on the front fans to run them. They had the fan connectors connected to a Molex that plug into the power supply, and I just did away with that. I took that out of the build. Ended up getting a splitter that I had laying around, connected the fans to the motherboard. That way we have a little bit of fan control. There's no reason to spin your fans at full blast if you're at idle. So in conclusion, I'd say that this was a great case to build in. I didn't really have any downsides. Just the 2 takeaways that I didn't like was not having the shroud to cover the power supply, which is minor, and also with the back pieces not being able to screw back in. It's very minor stuff, not deal breakers. As long as you take your time with routing your wires, keeping the look clean, you're going to make a nice clean build. If you just start putting in and rushing it, you're going to have a sloppy build. Wires are going to be everywhere, and you're going to have to be sorting them out. But overall, I mean, it's great. I definitely recommend this case. Anyone looking at a micro ATX build, it's definitely nice looking. It's definitely good on your budget. These handles give it a nice look. You can even take them off if you wanted to, but I like that it stands on the legs. So, I mean, I really like that as an aesthetic to it and keeps it really looking cool. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. What you guys think of the case, what you guys think of, my cable management in it. Look forward to seeing you guys again in the channel. Don't forget to subscribe.